The box was small, maybe the size of a shoebox. Inside it, 17 cassette tapes, each labeled with a date and a single word. Control. Silence. War. They were found in 2015, hidden in the attic of a retired corrections officer from San Quentin State Prison. What no one expected was what they contained. Whispers between guards. Coded gang messages. Secret meetings. And a final recording that would tear open one of California's darkest institutional secrets. This is the San Quentin tapes. Like, share, and subscribe, because what you're about to hear was never meant to be heard. The attic smelled like dust and disuse, the kind of air that holds its breath for decades. When the homeowner's son pried open the small wooden box, he expected family mementos, old photos, perhaps medals from his father's years as a correctional officer at San Quentin. Instead, he found 17 cassette tapes, each wrapped in brittle plastic, each labeled in faded marker with a single word: silence. War. Control. Tape 7, Confession. He didn't play them at first. He didn't dare. He called a local journalist instead, a woman named Marissa Cortez who'd made her name uncovering corruption inside California's prison contracts. When she held one of the tapes up to the light, she saw something odd. Each had a small sticker on the edge marked SQINT, a code used internally at San Quentin for interrogation recordings. But these weren't official tapes. The handwriting was too rushed, the labels too inconsistent. Someone had made these in secret. The first tape crackled to life on a second-hand recorder. The sound was faint, boots on concrete, a cough, the distant buzz of fluorescent lights. Then a voice. Male, calm, low. Recorder check. Wing C, 2340 hours. Keep this off the books. Then another voice, nervous. You sure about this, Jack? They'll hang us if they find out. The first voice laughed softly. They already hung us. We're just pretending to be alive. Marissa froze. She replayed it twice. What followed was nearly 2 hours of conversation, guards speaking in code about deals, contraband, something about green light lists approved by someone in admin, a network of corruption that blurred the line between custody and crime. Tape 2 was worse. It captured the sound of a beating, quick, brutal, efficient. Then a man sobbing. A voice said, "Tell your people and be blocked, this is their last warning. The yard's going dry." A pause. Then the same calm voice, "You understand what happens if they don't listen." For years, rumors had circulated about a hidden economy inside San Quentin, a black market run as much by guards as by inmates. But until now, no one had proof. These tapes were proof. And someone had risked everything to make them. As Marissa dug deeper, she discovered that the retired officer who'd owned the tapes, Thomas Greer, had died in 2012. Official cause, suicide. But the coroner's report mentioned something strange, a missing left index finger, amputated long before his death. Old prison records confirmed a rumor. Back in the 80s, Greer had lost it in an altercation. Some said it wasn't an inmate who took it. The deeper Marissa went, the darker it grew. Tape 4 contained something that chilled even her hardened nerves, a meeting recorded in what sounded like an office. Papers shuffled, a lighter flicked. A voice she would later match to a senior corrections administrator said, "We keep the gangs balanced. You take one off the board, someone else fills the void. Chaos is control." Another voice asked, "And if the press finds out? Then we burn it all." Tape 7 was labeled Confession. The recording quality was cleaner, newer. The same calm voice, older now, shakier. "My name is Sergeant Jack Harlan, San Quentin Correctional Staff, retired. If you're hearing this, it means I couldn't live with it anymore. What we did inside those walls, it wasn't corrections. It was a war. And we were the enemy." The line hissed, then fell silent. Marissa stopped the tape and stared at the recorder. Her reflection looked ghostly in its metal surface. That night she uploaded digital copies to 3 separate encrypted drives. Then she called a contact at the state attorney's office. Within 24 hours, someone broke into her apartment. Nothing was stolen, except the tapes. What they didn't know was that she'd already made backups. And when the first excerpt leaked online, the world heard what no one was supposed to, the sound of a prison eating itself alive. The leak hit the internet like a spark in dry brush. 2 minutes of audio, rough, distorted, unverified, posted anonymously under the title San Quentin, Tape 3. You could hear shouting, metal doors slamming, and a voice saying, "We'll let the black side and the Norteños kill each other before the weekend. Let 'em think it's their idea." Within hours, it was everywhere. Podcasts dissected it, news anchors speculated about it, and the Department of Corrections called it a fabrication. But inside San Quentin, something shifted. The air turned heavy. The men who'd lived the reality behind those walls knew exactly what they were hearing, and who those voices belonged to. By day 3, an internal memo circulated through the system: unauthorized recordings of state personnel constitute felony possession. Inmates were ordered to hand over contraband phones. Cells were searched. The tension inside the prison yard thickened like fog before a storm. Marissa Cortez had vanished. Her editor said she'd gone off-grid for safety, but her apartment remained sealed with police tape. Someone, maybe the same people who'd taken the tapes, had broken in again, this time taking her laptop and hard drives. But what they didn't realize was that the leak had already spread beyond her. The recordings were mirrored on servers overseas, translated, and even remixed in underground podcasts. The truth was loose, and it had teeth. One clip in particular caught fire. It wasn't violent, it was quiet. 2 men whispering. "You ever think we went too far? You think anyone out there cares? Someone will. Then they'll end up here too." It was the first time the public heard the human side of the guards, voices trapped by the very system they were part of. But with every view, the walls closed tighter on those still working inside. By late 2016, San Quentin's administration was in chaos. The warden resigned for personal reasons. 3 officers were suspended. A new internal task force, Operation Sweep, was launched to restore integrity. But to the men on the yard, it looked like the beginning of a purge. One inmate, known inside as Little Ghost, had been a porter in C Block back in 2011, one of the years the tapes were recorded. When journalists reached him through a legal aid group, he confirmed the impossible: the tapes were real. Those microphones? They hid them in vent shafts. Not for us, for each other. The guards didn't trust the new hires, and the gangs were buying protection from both sides. San Quentin was a chessboard, and we were the pieces. According to Little Ghost, Tape 9 captured something that terrified even the gangs: a secret meeting between officers and inmate shot callers, discussing yard management. In plain English, they were orchestrating violence to maintain balance. "You let one car hit another," he said, "the yard goes quiet for months." That's how they controlled it. When Tape 9 leaked, it was like detonating a grenade in the middle of California's correctional system. Legislators called for hearings. Activists demanded the governor intervene. But the Department of Corrections moved faster, shutting down access, threatening lawsuits, labeling the audio inauthentic digital fabrications. Still, the voices were too distinct, too real. Someone recognized Sergeant Jack Harlan's tone. Others matched background noises, a certain gate clang, the hum of a specific camera model, unique to San Quentin. Forensics confirmed the sound signatures. There was no denying it anymore. The war that had been hidden for decades was now public. But the real story wasn't just about corruption, it was about what came after. Inside the prison, trust evaporated. Guards who'd never been recorded suddenly found themselves under suspicion. One morning, a lieutenant named Brody was found unconscious in the staff parking lot, his car burned to the frame. Inmates said it was retaliation. The union said it was internal discipline. No one was ever charged. At night, rumors spread of new recordings still hidden, the missing tapes. The ones that contained the final confession. Some said it was proof of a murder staged as a suicide. Others said it documented a riot deliberately provoked by staff. But one thing was certain, whoever had made those tapes had died for them. A week later, a package arrived at a Sacramento newspaper. Inside was a single cassette labeled Tape 17, War Ends. No return address. The sound was almost too faint to hear at first. Then came Harlan's voice, shaky and near tears. "If anyone finds this, tell them I tried to stop it. We turned men into monsters and called it order. We killed the quiet ones first, because silence is dangerous." Silence remembers. The rest was static. The FBI took the tape before the public ever heard it. The official line, ongoing investigation. Nothing ever came of it. But the tapes had already done their damage. Whistleblowers inside the department came forward. Old incidents were reopened, deaths in custody once ruled natural causes, shootings once blamed on inmates. Files disappeared overnight. Evidence lockers burned in a freak electrical fire. By 2017, the San Quentin tapes were legend, half truth, half myth. Some said there were more than 17. Some swore they'd heard tape 20 circulating in the dark web, containing a confession from a state official. Others believed the tapes were cursed, everyone who touched them ended up dead, missing, or silent. But buried under all the rumor was something undeniable. The sound of a system unraveling under the weight of its own secrets. The governor's office called it an internal issue. But nothing inside San Quentin ever stayed internal for long. Once the first recordings went public, California's most famous prison became a national headline, a name whispered with the same weight as Watergate or Abu Ghraib. For weeks, talk shows debated whether the tapes were authentic, while inside the Capitol, the Department of Corrections launched its own Transparency Committee, a term that meant the opposite of what it said. They promised cooperation. They delivered redaction. The public saw only what the state allowed, snippets of static, muffled dialogue, brief transcripts stripped of names. But journalists who'd heard the full versions, the ones Marissa Cortez had digitized before vanishing, knew there was more. Much more. One file, marked Tape 12, the incident, captured a scene that sent shivers through everyone who heard it. It began with the sound of a door slamming, then an officer shouting, "You lost control of the tier." "We didn't lose it," another replied. "We traded it." What followed was chaos, boots on concrete, a burst of violence, a single gunshot echoing off steel. Then silence. A third voice, the same calm baritone from the earlier tapes, whispered, "Write it up as inmate on inmate. No paperwork. You hear me? None." That line would later appear, word for word, in an investigative report, proof that the recordings weren't myth. Meanwhile, San Quentin itself was becoming unrecognizable. Guards looked over their shoulders, inmates refused to speak. Some of the men who'd been part of the yard management network were quietly transferred to other prisons. Others resigned. One was found drowned in his backyard pool. Another turned up in Mexico, living under a false name. But something strange began to happen in the years after the tapes leaked. Prisoners started talking. Not to reporters, to each other. In the chow hall, old enemies shared details of what they'd seen. A man who'd served 30 years said, "They wanted us divided. That was the game. North against South, black against white. But the tapes? They proved the real war was above us." That idea, that the conflict had always been manufactured, spread faster than the violence ever had. And for the first time in decades, the yard quieted. Not from fear, but awareness. Outside, in the world beyond the walls, the story was evolving into a movement. Students wore shirts that read "Play Tape 7." Activists protested in front of the department headquarters, holding cassette symbols drawn in chalk. Every week, a new recording surfaced online, always brief, always anonymous. Some were verified, others clearly fake, but the effect was the same: the public stopped trusting the official version of anything. And then, out of nowhere, Tape 17 resurfaced. It appeared on a private forum hosted overseas, titled "The Final Confession, Full." the uploader's account name was red_cassette. When digital forensics traced the IP address, it led to a library computer in Oakland, the same one used years earlier by Marissa Cortez before she vanished. The file was clean, crisp, and complete. It began with the hum of a desk fan, the rustle of paper, and then Harlan's voice. "If this ever gets out, I'll be dead before the next sunrise. But I can't keep pretending we were the good guys." We called it the balance. That was the name, the unofficial one. We staged violence to keep order. We brokered peace through blood. We used gangs like gears in a clock, kept the hands turning while pretending to fix the machine. He paused. You could hear him pour a drink. The ice clinked softly. When one of ours got scared, when Greer tried to go clean, they made it look like suicide. He knew too much. He had the originals. I took copies. I thought I could fix it later. But later never came. A long exhale. If you're hearing this, that means I failed. The prison's still running the same way, just quieter. New warden, same rules. They bury the noise, but it's still there, under the floor. And then, almost as if speaking to someone beside him, we built a war and called it peace. God forgive us. The tape clicked off. That 10-minute recording spread everywhere, Twitter, Reddit, news outlets, documentaries. The state denied its authenticity again, but the tone in Harlan's voice was impossible to fake. Within a week, the Attorney General announced an official inquiry. Within a month, he resigned. The department's response was predictable. They called it a targeted misinformation campaign. But behind closed doors, senior officials were subpoenaed. Evidence lockers reopened. The FBI stepped in quietly. Even the governor's office stopped answering questions. For a brief moment, it looked like the truth might finally see daylight. But San Quentin has always been a master of shadows. Files vanished mid-investigation. Witnesses recanted. Hard drives were accidentally wiped. When a journalist asked what happened to the man who'd recorded the tapes, an anonymous insider replied, "He's still here. Just not in the way you think." And in the deepest part of the prison, in a sealed-off sublevel no longer on any map, someone carved 4 words into the concrete wall. The balance remains intact. By 2023, San Quentin wasn't just a prison anymore, it was a brand, a myth, a wound. Every politician who visited it spoke about rehabilitation, every journalist who wrote about it mentioned the tapes, and every guard who walked those halls felt the invisible weight of ghosts whispering through the vents. The institution had survived riots, reforms, lawsuits, and decades of scandal, but nothing had cut deeper than 17 pieces of magnetic tape. A new warden, Julia Carver, arrived with promises of transparency. Cameras on every tier, digital logs for every incident, body cams for staff. "We're not the San Quentin of the past," she said at her first press conference. But even she couldn't control what the walls remembered. During her first week, an officer found an old tape lodged behind a ventilation grate. It was unlabeled. The sound, when restored, was faint, just a single voice whispering, "They never stopped." Inside the yard, a new generation of inmates traded rumors about the second archive. Some said it was buried under the old administrative wing. Others claimed the tapes were digitized and hidden online by someone using the alias red_cassette. When staff tried to track the username, it traced back to multiple countries, Serbia, Chile, Nigeria, then right back to California. Every time they blocked one upload, another appeared. The system was being haunted by its own evidence. Meanwhile, strange things started happening within the prison. Files disappeared from secure servers. Surveillance feeds went black for minutes at a time. A radio frequency normally reserved for emergency broadcasts began playing distorted snippets of old recordings, the same lines everyone thought had been destroyed. At first, the administration blamed hackers. But an IT specialist later admitted off the record that the signal wasn't coming from outside the facility, it was coming from within. The inmates called it the voice. They said if you were awake after lockdown and listened closely, you could hear it through the vents. Sometimes it was just static, sometimes it was the calm tone of a man repeating, "Balance must be kept." The state tried to bury the story again, issuing press releases about a technological glitch. But something deeper was unfolding. A correctional officer turned whistleblower released internal memos showing that even after the scandal, San Quentin still used balance sheets, secret rosters listing which gangs controlled which cell blocks, which informants to protect, which to sacrifice. It was the same formula, the same manipulation, just digitized, modernized, streamlined. When journalists confronted Warden Carver, she didn't deny it. She only said, "The system runs itself now. I just make sure it doesn't burn." That line became infamous. In December 2023, another leak surfaced, a high-definition video uploaded under the title SQ, New Balance. It showed guards escorting a shackled inmate through an unlit corridor. As they passed, a voice on the intercom played an old recording. "We built a war and called it peace." The footage ended abruptly. No one could trace the source. But one frame, just one, showed a gloved hand placing a small object on the floor. A cassette tape. Investigators scoured the prison. They found nothing. But 2 days later, an envelope arrived at a San Francisco newsroom. Inside was a memory card containing digitized versions of all 17 original tapes, and one new file labeled 18. No one knew how it got there. The footage on that final recording was chillingly quiet, a slow pan through an empty corridor, doors swinging open on their own, and the faint sound of breathing behind the camera. Then, a voice, calm, familiar, Harlan's voice, sang, "It doesn't end when we die. The walls remember. They always do." The file ended there. That video would later be taken down due to security reasons, but by then, it had been downloaded hundreds of thousands of times. To this day, no one knows who continues to release the recordings. Some say it's the ghost of Marissa Cortez. Others believe it's Harlan's old partner, still alive and hiding in plain sight. And some, mostly the men who still serve time in San Quentin, say the tapes were never about exposing corruption at all. They were a warning that every system built on silence eventually starts to speak for itself.